What's happening to bikes across America isn't just unfair, it's calculated. And the deeper you dig, the darker it gets. Watch until the end to understand who's behind the bans and why your vehicle might be next. They pulled my ride. It happened without warning. One morning, thousands of Yamaha FZS FI V4 owners opened their mailboxes to find something no rider ever expects. A state-issued notice declaring their bikes unfit for legal road use. The letter didn't mince words. Registration revoked, effective immediately. No appeal, no hearing, just gone. One man in Phoenix said it felt like someone stole his freedom overnight. "I've ridden that machine to work, to weddings, to the hospital the day my kid was born," he told reporters. "And now the government says I can't even take it down the street." The shock wasn't just emotional, it was practical. Riders were left stranded. One in Ohio was ticketed on his commute the very next morning, unaware that his bike had been flagged. In Colorado, a woman trying to trade in her FZS at a local dealership was told it had suddenly lost resale value. "They said it was as good as scrap," she recalled, her voice cracking. "I paid for that bike in full. It was my car, my weekend, my sanity, and they just erased it." Worse yet, the ban wasn't across the country. It was patchy. 12 states enforced it almost simultaneously, but 28 others didn't. This inconsistency only deepened the confusion and outrage. Riders started sharing stories online, comparing their notices, legal codes, and even VIN scans. But nothing made sense. No advance warning, no manufacturer recall, no mechanical failure. Just a cold, bureaucratic shutdown of one of the most popular budget performance bikes in the market. If this has you fired up, hit like and drop a comment with your state. Let's see how far this story really goes. And so the question began to echo across social media, group chats, and garage meetups. How did this happen? Who gave the order? And why so quietly? Just as riders were demanding answers, the truth about how the ban was pulled off began to surface. The silent ban machine. The ban wasn't announced in a press conference. There was no viral video, no news alert, no bold signature ceremony. Instead, it happened deep inside the kind of state-level bureaucracy that most people ignore until it reaches into their driveway. In each of the 12 states, the ban on the Yamaha FZSFI V4 emerged from administrative adjustments, tucked into regulatory updates that rarely see daylight. In Michigan, the Department of Motor Vehicles quietly updated its approved vehicle compliance list. The FZSFI V4 was simply missing, no explanation. In North Carolina, a rider discovered the change only after trying to renew his registration and being rejected. "I asked them why," he said, and the lady at the counter just shrugged and said it was above her pay grade. And in Texas, the bike's classification was altered overnight, from street legal to non-compliant sport utility, without even a formal vote from the Transportation Board. This wasn't a democratic process. In none of the 12 states did elected officials vote on the ban. It came from behind desks, policy directors, highway safety administrators, mid-tier legal counsel working under vague authority to update safety compliance lists. There were no public hearings, no notices in local newspapers. The only trace came after the fact, buried in quarterly DMV bulletins filled with dense legal jargon that almost no one reads. By the time the public caught wind, it was too late. Titles had already been marked. Licensing systems flagged the model. Insurance companies began pulling coverage. Every system that tracks compliance was flipped against the FZS FI V4, turning a fully legal machine into a ghost in less than a week. Banned bikes or not, good gear still matters. Our top picks are in the description. But if the states claimed the ban was about safety, many wanted to know, what safety data were they looking at? That's when a wave of independent engineers started asking dangerous questions. The data doesn't add up. If the Yamaha FZSFI V4 was truly unsafe, the numbers would show it. That was the claim regulators leaned on when asked for comment. But when actual mechanical analysts and traffic safety researchers began reviewing crash data and system specs, the story didn't hold up. In fact, it started falling apart. The FZS FI V4 isn't some high-risk speed demon. It is a modest commuter bike with a balanced chassis, tuned suspension, and a fuel-injected engine producing under 20 horsepower. It has disc brakes, electronic fuel injection, and complies with international emission and noise standards. Safety reviews from India and Europe listed among the safest lightweight motorcycles on the market. So where was the red flag? A deep dive into traffic incident databases from states like Georgia, Nevada, and Illinois showed no unusual pattern of accidents involving the FZS. Its incident rate was actually lower than average for motorcycles in the same class. Mechanical reliability reports showed minimal failure rates. There had been no recalls, no consumer safety alerts, no insurance spikes, and yet regulators were invoking a potential performance hazard clause, one usually reserved for off-road ATVs and gray market imports. One California-based analyst said, "If this bike is banned for safety, then half of what's on the road today should be banned too." Even Yamaha's own documentation showed full compliance with federal standards, raising questions about whether the states were even using the correct testing criteria. So if it wasn't about safety, what was it really about? That question didn't just spark suspicion, it led directly to the money trail. Who profits from bans? When regulators move this fast, someone usually stands to gain. And in this case, it didn't take long to find the fingerprints. In the months leading up to the ban, lobby groups representing several major domestic motorcycle manufacturers had ramped up spending, particularly in state transportation offices. Campaign donations surged, white papers were submitted. Closed-door meetings took place between top policy advisors and manufacturers whose own sales were lagging behind in the under 400cc segment. The Yamaha FZS FIV4 had been eating into market share. With a price point under $3,000, high fuel efficiency, and street-ready specs, it was becoming a go-to choice for new riders, delivery workers, and budget commuters. That made it a threat, especially to companies selling more expensive, stripped-down alternatives in the same class. Multiple dealerships across the South and Midwest reported pressure from domestic reps to stop promoting the FZS. One even leaked a memo suggesting that non-domestic lightweight bikes are harming long-term revenue potential in Tier 2 markets. Then came the policy briefs, documents sent directly to DMV and highway safety officials urging tightened scrutiny of foreign-built motorcycles under 400cc. The language was vague, but the timing wasn't. 2 months later, the bans began rolling out. Industry insiders say this wasn't a safety response, it was economic protectionism dressed as policy. By eliminating the FZS FIV4 from legal markets, competing manufacturers cleared runway for their own lower-end models, now repackaged and reintroduced at higher price points. It wasn't about safety, it wasn't even about regulation. It was about market control. And that realization lit a fire under riders, mechanics, dealers, and eventually the courts. Because the backlash, it was just getting started. Inside the engine, the Yamaha FZS FIV4 was never supposed to be a controversy. It was a precision-engineered commuter bike, lightweight, efficient, and mechanically sound. Under the hood, it carried a 149 cubic centimeter air-cooled 4-stroke engine designed not for speed demons but for everyday urban riders. Its top speed hovered around 60 miles per hour and it produced under 15 horsepower. This was not a performance machine built to tear down highways, it was a city bike, a workhorse, and a student's companion. But the real brilliance was in its design decisions. Yamaha implemented a fuel injection system optimized for cleaner emissions, allowing it to meet international norms without sacrificing throttle response. Its braking system included a front disc brake with single-channel ABS, which reduced lockups during emergency stops. The frame? A diamond-type chassis designed for road stability without excessive weight, offering better control at low speeds. What many riders didn't realize until the ban hit was that the FZS FIV4 already complied with standards stricter than some enforced in the United States. In India, where road conditions are often harsher, this bike was road-tested, pothole-punished, and field-proven across hundreds of thousands of miles. Europe certified variants of it for commuter use, and in Southeast Asia, the FZS earned a reputation for reliability that rivaled far more expensive machines. So what made American regulators flag this particular model? When compared side by side with domestically produced models in the same class, the FZS held its own, or exceeded them in braking distance, vibration tolerance, and fuel efficiency. Nothing in the data suggested a defect. Nothing in its safety profile indicated danger, which made the next development even harder to believe. Because the more legal analysts looked into how the ban was executed, the more they realized something chilling had occurred. Laws rewritten without votes. The ban wasn't just abrupt. It was constructed through language manipulation. In multiple states, lawmakers didn't pass new bills. They didn't hold public hearings. Instead, administrative lawyers quietly tweaked the meaning of existing safety compliance rules. Words were changed, clauses were added, definitions shifted, and motorcycles like the FZS-FIV4 were suddenly disqualified by technicalities that didn't exist when they were sold. In Arizona, for instance, the state transportation department issued an interpretive update to an old emissions clause. It expanded the definition of non-compliant vehicles to include models lacking domestic market certification regardless of operational footprint. That sounds harmless until you realize it meant that even if the bike passed every test, it could still be deemed illegal if it wasn't officially sold through a specific corporate pipeline. In Wisconsin, they used noise ordinance adjustments, reclassifying certain decibel thresholds during idle conditions. The FZS didn't exceed them in motion, but at a cold start, it momentarily crossed the new threshold by fewer than 2 decibels. No one warned dealers. No one warned owners. One tweak in wording, and suddenly thousands of bikes were out of compliance. But perhaps the most egregious example came from Florida, where the Motor Vehicle Safety Review Board altered a policy memo from 2 years prior and applied it retroactively. This memo was never meant to govern enforcement, but under new interpretation, it was used to justify denying registration renewal to hundreds of riders. No vote, no hearing. Just quiet bureaucratic redefinition. Legal scholars were stunned. Retroactive enforcement of new interpretations goes against long-standing principles of administrative fairness. A vehicle deemed legal at purchase should not become illegal because of a behind-the-scenes rewrite. And yet, that's exactly what happened. And once you traced who had been lobbying to change those definitions in the first place, it became even more clear who stood behind the curtain. Lobbyists in the shadows. They weren't on camera. They weren't in the press. But they were everywhere behind the scenes. Lobbying disclosures from 6 affected states revealed something striking. Just before the FZS ban wave began, new spending records appeared. Legal firms representing competitive OEM interests, motorcycle industry groups, and coalition safety advocates. On the surface, nothing unusual. But once the filings were cross-referenced, a pattern emerged. One lobbying firm in particular, based in Washington, D.C., had filed notices in 4 different states in a 30-day window. Their talking points, nearly identical. Language urging updated vehicle frameworks, removal of non-standard bikes from commuter corridors, and a push for harmonized classification. That phrase, harmonized classification, showed up again weeks later in a state memo justifying the FZS ban. It wasn't a coincidence. It was orchestration. Former aides from 2 state legislatures confirmed off the record that pressure was applied from a group of competing manufacturers to speed through updates. Committee members were told they were closing safety loopholes. No one mentioned they'd be banning a best-selling commuter bike, but if lobbying lit the fuse, someone still had to plant the charges. Whistleblower leaks emails. His name was withheld for his protection, but the documents he leaked were impossible to ignore. A mid-level policy analyst inside the Illinois Department of Transportation, he had been tasked with reviewing vehicle compliance drafts. What he found didn't sit right with him. Internal emails showed regulators flagging the Yamaha FZ-SFIV 4 months before any public complaints were recorded. No crash data, no consumer complaints, no manufacturer recall. Just a line that read, "Confirm if model FZS can be bundled into Group B removal. Likely candidate for elimination." That line was dated 4 months before the first registration was revoked. The whistleblower's cache included over 70 emails, slide decks, and internal memos exchanged between regulators in Illinois, Florida, and Michigan. One memo outright admitted that the FZS undercuts domestic market strategy and recommended quiet removal under compliance filters to avoid litigation. It was clear. They were not responding to a crisis. They were executing a coordinated removal plan. Even more damning were emails from lobbyists offering draft-ready regulatory language to state attorneys. One PowerPoint presentation titled "Ensuring Road Safety Through Fair Market Practice" was, in truth, a how-to manual for phasing out specific bike models using emissions and classification loopholes. It listed the FZS FI Fee 4 by name, alongside others deemed margin-negative threats. The whistleblower also revealed a chilling reality. The coordination extended beyond just a few states. There were template documents, shared legal strategies, even synchronized timing planned to minimize public backlash by staggering enforcement letters across multiple jurisdictions. What started as a regulatory mystery had now become undeniable collusion between powerful industry players and complicit public officials. And what that leak triggered in the riding community would bring protests to the streets, lawyers to courtrooms, and pressure to Capitol Hill. Because the riders weren't just angry anymore, they were organizing. Riders flood the capitals. It started with one lone bike parked on the steps of the Wisconsin Capitol, a sign tied to the handlebars: "Legal last week, criminal today." Within 48 hours, that bike was surrounded by hundreds more, each one ridden in from towns, farms, and cities across the state. Then it happened again, in New Mexico, in Pennsylvania, in Tennessee. From coast to coast, FZS owners and two-wheeler riders took to the roads, not just to commute, but to resist. They weren't led by unions or activists. They were delivery workers, ex-Marines, students, mechanics. Many had never protested in their lives. But this time, the fight was personal. The marches weren't polite, they were deafening. Engines roared outside government buildings. Banners waved in the rain. Plates were removed from bikes, replaced with printed sheets reading, "We ride for what's ours." And in city after city, traffic police were forced to stand down. They simply didn't have the numbers to confront it. The silence from officials? Deafening. Not one governor showed up. Not one transportation chief faced the crowd. But people kept coming. Because once the streets spoke, the internet exploded. TikTok fury hits Congress. No press release could contain what came next. A single TikTok clip, filmed by a rider outside the Iowa State House, showed 6 officers blocking access to the building. His caption read, "They banned my bike. Then they banned my voice." That one clip hit 3 million views in under 6 hours. By morning, it was everywhere. FZS hashtags climbed trending charts. Live streams from protest lines reached tens of thousands. Teenagers began stitching clips into anthem videos. Veterans uploaded monologues about freedom. Parents filmed their kids on banned bikes and driveways, demanding to know why. No lobbyist could outmessage that. Soon, federal lawmakers couldn't ignore the heat. A senator from Ohio tweeted that mobility bans should never be weaponized against working people. A committee in Washington quietly requested documents from 2 state DOTs, and at least one tech CEO offered free legal aid to riders whose vehicles were impounded. It was no longer a product story. It had become a digital rebellion, wild, fast, and untouchable. And just when regulators thought they could ride it out, a judge stepped in. Injunction granted. In a packed courtroom in Atlanta, the first major legal challenge to the FZS ban went to trial. The plaintiffs, 2 mechanics, a high school teacher, and a retired trucker, all of whom owned the banned model. The state argued safety concerns, citing potential risk anomalies, but when pressed, their counsel failed to produce a single third-party crash report involving the Yamaha FZS FIV4. Not one. Then the plaintiff's attorney pulled out a factory compliance document, stamped, signed, and dated 6 months before the ban. It showed the model met every emission, safety, and noise threshold required by the state at the time of sale. The judge's face didn't move, but the room did. Later that afternoon, a temporary injunction was granted. Effective immediately, enforcement of the ban would pause. For the first time in weeks, relief swept through the rider community. Not victory, just air to breathe. Shops reopened, tickets were frozen, bikes came out of storage. But the celebration didn't last, because a much bigger force was already preparing its counterstrike. Big OEMs pushed back. They stayed quiet through the protests. They issued no comment during the hearings. But once the injunction hit, the big players made their move. Within days, 3 top manufacturers filed legal briefs supporting the bans. citing market integrity and uniform regulatory standards. Internal memos leaked to reporters showed exactly why. Some dealers had begun taking deposits for alternative bikes, newer, cheaper, sleeker. One brand, caught red-handed, had even offered rebates to customers turning in FZS models. Another firm had pitched state regulators a replacement lineup weeks before the original ban went live. This wasn't about safety. It was about capturing market share through elimination. So they attacked the injunction, claimed it created unfair conditions and consumer confusion. They tried to shift the blame onto Yamaha and the riders who'd misunderstood compliance. But it backfired. Every court filing only fueled more fury. Riders posted screenshots. Dealers leaked emails. Even a handful of engineers stepped forward saying they were pressured to back data they didn't believe. Now the public knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a manufactured collapse. And with each push from the OEMs, the resistance only hardened. Scooter bans are next. It started quietly. A memo from a Southern Transportation Department reclassifying e-scooters as non-roadworthy. Then a food delivery driver in Illinois got ticketed for riding a 100cc moped on the same route he'd taken for 2 years. Soon, riders across urban hubs began noticing something darker. Entire categories of two-wheelers were vanishing from registration systems. The ban contagion was spreading. This time, the targets weren't just weekend riders or suburban commuters. It was the backbone of gig labor, delivery workers, immigrant couriers, students. Their lightweight, affordable vehicles were suddenly labeled non-compliant. No hearings, no public statements, just silent enforcement. The states didn't expand the law, they reinterpreted it. And the deeper you looked, the more obvious it became. This wasn't about one bike anymore. It was about the road itself. Who gets to use it? Who gets pushed off? What was once an isolated model ban had become a full-scale purge. And with the pressure mounting, state leaders could no longer hide behind silence. Governors pick sides. It was bound to split the country. By the third month of backlash, the bans weren't just regulatory, they were political firebombs. And governors were forced to answer a question they never expected on the campaign trail. Will you defend the right to ride? Some embraced the chaos. In Georgia, the governor praised the bans, claiming they kept foreign disruptors off American roads. In contrast, Minnesota's top official took the opposite stance, calling the crackdown a betrayal of working-class transportation. Lines were drawn. Red and blue didn't predict positions anymore. It was urban versus rural, legacy versus new tech, top-down mandates versus street-level reality. Suddenly, a vehicle's approval became a state's ideological fingerprint. But the real shift came when federal politicians started taking sides. Congressional hopefuls gave speeches on mobility rights. Senate candidates slammed backdoor regulation. Pollsters were stunned. Voters weren't just reacting, they were organizing. The issue had mutated. It wasn't just about bikes, it was about identity. And the next wave of resistance wasn't political, it was economic. Dealers joined the rebellion. They weren't activists, they were repairmen, parts distributors, small business owners who spent decades serving their communities. But when the bans started killing their sales, closing their service bays, and wiping out resale values overnight, they turned furious. Dealers who sold the Yamaha FZSF IV watched as stock became dead weight. Insurance brokers dropped coverage. State websites flagged VINs as restricted. And worst of all, customers, longtime loyal riders, stopped walking through the door. So they flipped the script. In Florida, one dealership handed out free diagnostic sheets proving the FZS met every prior state standard. In Oregon, a coalition of shops sued the state transportation board for damages, citing economic sabotage. And in Ohio, 24 repair garages coordinated a single-day shutdown. Signs taped to their windows read, "We stand with the riders. No bikes, no business." It wasn't a PR move, it was survival. They'd been collateral damage in a corporate-driven campaign. Now they were fighting back with invoices, repair logs, and a message the state couldn't spin. You banned trust. And just as the rebellion was hitting full stride, the politicians realized they'd lost control of the narrative, because now it was heading straight for the ballot box. If this got you thinking, subscribe. What's coming next could change everything. The bike becomes a ballot issue. No one expected it to become a campaign centerpiece. But when local town halls started turning into rider forums and protest signs began appearing outside debate stages, one thing became clear. The Yamaha FZ SFI V4 wasn't just a motorcycle anymore. It was a political test. Candidates rushed to respond. Some tried to reframe the bans as temporary measures. Others doubled down, calling the backlash misguided outrage. But the smarter ones, they got on the bike. Literally. In Nevada, a mayoral candidate made headlines riding an FZS to a press conference. In Texas, a congressional challenger launched an ad campaign showing their first-generation scooter saying, "They banned my ride. They won't ban my voice." The response was electric. Voters, especially under 40, began listing transportation freedom as a key concern. Media outlets caught on. The phrase "ride rights voter" appeared in headlines, and party strategists, once dismissive, began reworking messaging to account for the uprising, because this wasn't just about a vehicle anymore. It was about who writes the rules, who benefits, and who gets left behind. The FZS had become more than a machine. It was a referendum on the future of freedom, and it's rolling into every district in the country. This wasn't just about one bike, it was about power and who gets to ride. Now it's your turn to push back. With understanding, with skill, with precision. Watch the next video to unlock what your motorcycle is truly capable of. And if you felt this, show it. Like, comment, and subscribe. Because smart riders don't wait for permission, they ride prepared.